Before you sign anything on that diesel pusher, walk to the dash and give it 30 seconds. That's the whole test. Chock the wheels, warm the engine, watch the tachometer, put it in drive, hold the brake, and go to full throttle for no more than 30 seconds. If that Allison transmission is healthy, the needle climbs, holds, and settles. If something's wrong, you're about to find out before you own it, not after. This is the exact test Allison puts in its own 3000 mAh and 4000 mAh owner's manual, and almost nobody selling you a used coach offers to run it with you. A rebuild on one of these can run anywhere from around $4,800 to $10,000. More once a shop pulls it from a rear engine bay. 30 seconds now, or thousands later. Here's exactly how to run it and what that needle is telling you. Let's slow down and actually run this the right way, because doing it wrong can hide the exact problem you're trying to catch, or worse, leave you paying for a repair you never saw coming. First, chock the wheels. This isn't optional, and it isn't paranoia. You're about to hold a multi-ton diesel coach at full throttle against nothing but the brakes, and you want the steel doing part of that job, not just your foot and hope. Do this in an open lot, not backed up against another rig, and not on a test drive where the salesman is the one behind the wheel. You want to be the one running this test on your terms, and if you can bring a second set of eyes along to watch the gauge while you're working the pedals and the shifter, even better. 2 people catch more than 1. Next, let the engine come up to real operating temperature before you touch the throttle. A cold stall test tells you almost nothing, because a cold transmission behaves differently than a warm one, and you're trying to see how it acts under the same conditions. It'll see cruising down the interstate at highway speed with a full tank and the air conditioning running. While it's warming up, find a way to actually watch the tachometer, not just glance at a warning light on the dash. Some coaches have a clear engine gauge right where you'd expect it. Others bury it behind the wheel or off to one side. And if you can't find it, ask the seller to show you. A seller who hesitates on a question that simple has already told you something before the test even starts. Once the engine's warm, set the parking brake, then get your foot hard on the service brake as well, both, not just one or the other, and shift into drive. Now bring the engine up to full throttle and hold it there. This is the part people get wrong, because the instinct is to hold it as long as you can stand it, thinking longer means more certain. Don't. Allison's own manual for the 3000 mAh and 4000 mAh is specific here, covered in the next section, but the short version is: watch the needle rise, note where it settles, and let off well inside 30 seconds. You're not trying to prove anything to the transmission, and this isn't a replacement for a full professional pre-purchase inspection either. Think of it as the 30 seconds that tells you whether that fuller inspection is even worth paying for. A proper NRVI, a certified pre-purchase inspection on a Class A. This size typically runs somewhere between $450 and $1,500, sometimes more on a longer coach with more slide-outs and systems to check. That's not wasted money if you're serious about a coach. It's a small price against a transmission or roof problem that could run into 5 figures. But most buyers don't get to that step until after they have already fallen for a listing, and plenty of listings don't survive 30 seconds of this test. Run the test first. If it passes clean, you've earned the right to spend real money on the fuller inspection. If it doesn't, you just saved yourself an inspection fee on a coach you were never going to buy anyway. While you've got the engine bay open to warm things up and find that gauge, take 30 more seconds to just look around back there too. You're already standing in the one spot on the whole coach most buyers never bother to open. Check for anything obviously leaking or freshly wiped clean. A suspiciously spotless engine bay on an older coach is its own kind of red flag. Here's what you're actually looking for once that needle starts to move. A healthy Allison climbs at a predictable rate, settles at a stall speed that holds steady rather than continuing to creep upward, and comes back down smoothly the moment you ease off the throttle. That settling is the transmission telling you the torque converter and the clutch packs behind it are doing their job the way they are supposed to. This is exactly why a real tachometer matters more than a dash warning light. A light only tells you something already went wrong. A tachometer shows you the actual number climbing in real time, which is the only way you catch a needle that's climbing too slowly or one that never quite settles before it becomes a light. What you don't want to see is a needle that keeps climbing without ever settling, one that hunts up and down instead of holding a steady number, or a noticeable delay before anything happens at all when you first go to full throttle. In general terms, a slow or hunting climb often points toward worn clutch material or a fluid level or condition problem, while a long delay before engagement can point toward a torque converter or valve body issue. You don't have to diagnose the exact cause standing in a parking lot. That's a shop's job. What you do have to do is recognize that any one of those readings is a reason to back off immediately and have a shop look at it before you go any further, not a reason to run the test again longer just to be sure. Running it again longer is exactly the wrong instinct, even if the first read looked fine. And that brings us to the number that matters more than most people realize. 30 seconds is a hard ceiling, not a rough suggestion you can round up from because the reading looks encouraging. Allison's own documentation for these transmissions states plainly that the engine should never be operated more than 30 seconds at full throttle with the output stalled, because beyond that window, the fluid temperature climbs fast enough to cause real overheat damage, the kind of damage a fluid change afterward can't undo. The manual spells out the actual numbers too. The sump limit sits at 250 degrees, and fluid leaving for the cooler has a ceiling around 300. You don't need a thermometer wired into the pan to respect that limit. You need a watch, or honestly, just counting it out in your head and the discipline to let off the instant you hit it, whether the reading looked healthy or not. That discipline is the whole test. Skip it, and you've turned a diagnostic tool into the very thing that damages the transmission you were trying to protect in the first place. If you didn't know that 30-second ceiling had real teeth before this video, that's exactly the kind of thing worth having in your corner before your own inspection day. So go ahead and subscribe now if you want the rest of this channel's real numbers on hand before your next big purchase. So why does 30 seconds of your time deserve an entire video built around it? Because of what's sitting on the other side of a transmission that fails this test, and it's a wider range than most buyers expect in both directions. Real shop numbers for an Allison 3000 made H or 4000 made I. Rebuild run across a fairly broad band depending on how far you have to go. A basic overhaul with a shorter warranty starts around $4,800. A licensed independent rebuilder's job with a longer warranty attached tends to land closer to $6,000. Go through Allison itself for a factory rebuild with towing coverage included, and you're looking at roughly $7,300. A full new or remanufactured unit installed can reach $10,000. Notice that's not one flat number, and it never was. Anyone telling you this is a clean $20,000 problem either hasn't priced a real quote recently or is rounding up hard enough to scare you into a rushed decision. If you've been quoted a number anywhere near that on one of these transmissions, drop it in the comments, because that's exactly the kind of real itemized figure other buyers reading this need to see instead of a scary round number nobody can source. Get an actual written quote from an Allison authorized service center before you assume the worst, and treat any number you hear secondhand from a forum post or somebody's secondhand story as a starting point for your own homework, not gospel. Better yet, call 2 different Allison authorized shops if you can, because labor rates and even parts pricing shift noticeably by region, and a number from one shop 3 states away doesn't tell you what it'll actually cost near you. Weigh all of this against that $450 to $1,500 inspection fee from a minute ago. A rebuild is a real number worth taking seriously, but it's also exactly the kind of number a good inspection and an honest test can help you see coming instead of discovering after the fact. Here's where the bill can genuinely grow past even that range, and it's usually not the transmission part itself, it's the labor. These are rear engine coaches, and pulling a transmission out of a rear engine bay is a fundamentally different job than doing the same work on a truck, sitting nose forward on a lift with easy access from above. A shop has to work around the coach's own structure just to get a wrench in there, sometimes dropping other components out of the way first, and that labor time adds up fast, sometimes faster than the parts bill does. If the coach can't be driven to a shop under its own power, add a flatbed tow to that total too. And on a Class A, this size, that's not a cheap local hookup. It can run several $100s on its own depending on distance. And remember, this range covers the transmission alone. It doesn't cover the engine, the generator, the roof, or anything else on a used coach that deserves its own honest look. That's the real range you're protecting yourself against with a test that costs you nothing but half a minute of your time and the willingness to actually ask for it before you sign anything. One phrase worth watching for on the sales sheet or out of the seller's mouth as is, where is. That's not automatically a scam. Plenty of honest private sellers use it because they genuinely don't know everything about a coach they didn't maintain from new. But it does mean the cost of anything this test uncovers is entirely yours the moment you sign, so treat those words as a reason to ask more questions, not sign faster and make sure the test happens before that signature, not after. Here's a question worth answering before you even get to running the test. Do you actually know which of these 2 transmissions is behind your dash? The 3000 May-A and 4000 May-H aren't the same unit wearing 2 different badges. They are built for genuinely different jobs with real numbers to back that up, and the difference matters for more than bragging rights. The 3000 mAh is rated for up to 400 horsepower and around 1,200 pound-feet of input torque, paired with its own family of torque converters, and it's the lighter of the two at roughly 535 pounds dry. Step up to the 4000 mAh and you're looking at up to 525 horsepower and 1,650 pound-feet of torque, a different, heavier-duty torque converter family in a unit that weighs closer to 830 pounds, nearly 300 pounds heavier, built to sit behind the bigger diesels that need it. In plain terms, that gap in torque is the difference between a coach that manages a mountain-grade towing a dinghy comfortably all day and one that is working noticeably harder to do the same job. Here's the part that surprises most buyers when they see Allison's own spec sheet for the first time. Neither transmission carries its own gross vehicle weight rating. You'd assume the bigger, heavier unit comes stamped with a bigger weight number somewhere on it. It doesn't work that way here. Your coach's chassis builder sets the gross vehicle weight rating on its own separate plate, not Allison. So when somebody tells you a 4000 mAh means your coach is rated to carry more weight, that's not quite right. What it actually tells you is that your engine and torque needs were big enough to call for the larger transmission, and that's all it means. The weight rating is a separate question you take to the chassis builder, not the transmission tag. Knowing which one you have tells you what engine class you're paired with, what parts availability looks like, and what labor costs down the road tend to run. It's usually stamped right on the transmission's own identification tag. If you know where on the case to look, and it's worth 5 minutes of your inspection and maybe a phone photo to look up later before you ever get to the stall test itself. Here's a quick way to sanity check which one you're probably looking at before you ever pop the engine cover open. The 3000 mAh usually rides behind a Cummins ISC or ISL, typically somewhere in the 350 to 400 horsepower range. The 4000 mAh usually sits behind a Caterpillar C12 or C15, commonly in the 500 to 515 horsepower range. That's not a hard rule for every coach ever built. Manufacturers mix and match parts over the years, but if you see a Caterpillar C15 badge and somebody tells you it's paired with a 3000 mAh, that's worth a second look before you take their word for it. The stall test tells you about right now, this exact moment, with this exact fluid and this exact engine. What it can't tell you is how this transmission was actually treated for the 10 or 15 years before you showed up, and that's really the bigger fear underneath all of this. The one most buyers feel without quite knowing how to name it. Not a dramatic, obvious failure, a slow, undetected history of running a little hotter than it should have, one skipped fluid change at a time, with nothing to show for it until it's your problem instead of the last owner's. This is where Allison's own service intervals become your best question for a seller, not just routine maintenance trivia. With a standard fluid, Allison calls for service on a noticeably shorter cycle, but coaches running the full synthetic TranSynd fluid get a documented extended interval, 50,000 miles or 2,000 hours, whichever comes first, and the best case interval on record runs up to 100,000 miles or 4,000 hours. Notice that's miles or hours. not just miles. That distinction matters enormously for this specific vehicle class because a motorhome doesn't accumulate wear the way a delivery truck does. Picture two coaches, both showing 40,000 miles on the odometer. One was driven mostly highway, a few long trips a year. The other spent most of its life sitting at a campground running the generator for air conditioning, idling in a check-in line, holding at a rally all weekend, all without the odometer moving an inch. Those two 40,000-mile coaches can carry wildly different actual hour counts on that transmission, and mileage alone will never show you which one you're looking at. So when you're asking a seller for maintenance history, ask for both numbers, miles and hours, and ask specifically whether they've been running TranSynd. Some coaches have a dedicated hour meter separate from the odometer, often near the dash gauges or in the engine monitoring display. And if yours has one, that number is worth writing down right alongside the mileage. A confident answer with paperwork behind it is worth a lot. While you're at it, pull the transmission dipstick yourself and take a look. Fluid that's dark, gritty, or burnt smelling is telling you something even before any lab gets involved. If those service records genuinely don't exist, that's not automatically a deal breaker, but it's real room to negotiate the price down. And it's also exactly the situation where a simple fluid sample sent out for lab analysis, the same kind independent mechanics recommend, can tell you more than a stall test alone ever will. Put all of that together, and here is what 30 seconds actually buys you. A real, honest reading on a transmission that has genuinely earned its reputation over the years, which is exactly why so many buyers stop checking and just trust the name stamped on the case. That reputation is deserved. It just isn't a substitute for you doing this yourself on your own terms before you sign anything. So here's the short version to actually take with you to the lot. Chock the wheels and warm the engine up completely before you touch the throttle. Watch the tachometer directly, hold both brakes, put it in drive, go to full throttle, and come off well before 30 seconds, no matter how healthy that reading looks. Know whether you're looking at a 3000 mH or a 4000 mH, and understand that the weight rating on your coach comes from the chassis builder, not the transmission badge. Check the badge on the engine too. Cummins usually means a 3000 mH. Caterpillar usually means a 4000 mH, and budget $450 to $1,500 for a real inspection once the test passes. Ask for the fluid and filter history in both miles and hours. Check the dipstick yourself while you're standing right there. And walk in already knowing the real rebuild range runs roughly $4,800 to $10,000, not some scarier flat number somebody heard secondhand at a campground. If this is the first real itemized breakdown you've gotten on this test, subscribe and share it with anyone else shopping a used diesel pusher right now, because the next buyer standing in that lot deserves the same 30 seconds and the same real numbers before they sign anything.